Welcome to a new video in my SAP GUI scripting series. I have done quite a few videos how to interact with SAP GUI from Excel, and there was a question how to do the same from Microsoft Access. I'm using my latest example of extracting the log entries from SM12 and show how to do the same in Access. If you are new to GUI scripting, I recommend watching my first video in this series, which explains the basics of GUI scripting, addresses some common issues. The Excel file, the Access file I'm showing in this video is available for download, and you can find the link in the video description. First of all, I would like to state that I'm not really an expert in Microsoft Access. I used Access in the past, long time ago, so I do remember some of the basics, but especially now with this Access 2013 and in the this UI has changed in terms of now it has ribbons instead of the old menu that I got used to maybe 10-15 years ago. It's been a little bit of a challenge, but I guess if you know Access, you should be able to get around with it and do some of the things that I was doing. So back to the basics concepts. So you have SM12, you have the log entries in SAP, and I'm going to use this as an example to extract information and save it in a table in Microsoft Access. What I've done is, first thing I've done is I've created a new table, and I've done that because I'm guessing you are using Access, or you want to use Access as opposed to Microsoft Excel, because you need to present the data in a special format, or maybe your company has Microsoft SharePoint, so you can integrate this into a SharePoint site a little bit better. Again, I don't really use those tools. I'm not really familiar what they can do, but anyway, there can be a number of reasons why you would use Access. But in most cases, you want your data, whatever you're extracting from SAP, into a particular format, so there would be a table storing the information that we are extracting. So I've gone ahead, I've created a new table, and I like to maintain the table in this view, in this design view, so I can specify the field names and the field types. So I've just created a very simple table with a auto number ID field, which is the primary key, and then 4 other fields. Basically, I just cherry-picked a couple of fields from the SM12 list. So the username, the time, the table name, and the log argument. And it's quite simple because the time is a date and type, date time type. All the other fields are short texts. So working with this should be really easy. I haven't changed anything on the other properties. So I quickly created the this, which gave me come on, Access. So the table gives me this table will give me the entries it's going to present the entries in such a format. By the way, is it normal that I have to wait for like at least a minute to change between the view? I mean, I eventually killed the Access to and then restarted the whole thing again. Anyway, that's not the point of this video. So yeah, I created the table, and now next I created a new dialog. And again, I think here I just picked a form or a blank form just to create a dialog, so I can have a button which kicks off the Access script. And sorry, let me back to the design view, and all I have done is I've renamed the buttons. I think this was like a save and close button on some standard dialog, but again, you can add your own buttons. And I put 2 labels in, so I can just update these labels from the code to say how many records got updated, or what was the timestamp and the last record got updated. And if you come here to the other, and sorry, not the event one, I put an event on the on-click method of both of these buttons. And if you click here, you can see that the event is the event got created in the form code, the form dialog code. It's the same, pretty much the same concept as you see in Excel as well. So you create a button, and then when you create a macro, it creates the macro in the in the code of the worksheet, I think. But I have this habit of putting my actual code in a different module, which I've done here as well. Next, I've created a very simple report so that we can show some stuff instead of going into the table. And I use the second button just to display this report. And then I've also created a module, so you can all do this from using the create here. I use the report wizard for the report, and I added a module to the code, which is the GUI script one, and that's where most of, well, not most, but all of my code is going to be. And so that will be all about the Excel, the access part, as in the access front end. And I think now it's doing this lock again. So now we should look at the code after I restart this damn application again. So here we are in Access again, third time lucky maybe. And I'm going to click. Well, you can click on the module here, or the usual hotkey is Alt F11 to get into the Excel. And first of all, let's look at the references, which is not going to be very surprising, because I think the Visual Basic and the Microsoft Data Access and the Ole automation comes as a default. And I have added the SAP GUI Scripting API. It's exactly the same as what we used in Excel. So it's under C Program Files, SAP Frontend, SAP GUI, SAP FEWSE.ocx. And for some of the code, I also needed the Microsoft DAO object library, and I've just found it in the list. So if you scroll down to Microsoft, then you will find this one. I can't even see the exact path for the DLL or the OCX, but anyway, it's going to be spelled like Microsoft DAO 3.6 object library in the list. So just find it and then tick, and that should be all about the references. And let's go over to the script, which is the where most of the logic is, or all of the logic is. So when I click on the button which says refresh data from SAP, that's the piece of code which gets executed, which calls the start script, and the start script method is in the module, and it's actually right here on the top. And if you see the top of the the global declaration, it's exactly the same as the Excel example I have. And even if I scroll down to for example, the attach session method, it's an exact same copy of the Excel one. I mean, the only minor changes I had to make, probably no changes to this one, but changes to the other one is more like, getting rid of the references which are Excel specific, like, opening a sheet or getting data from the sheet, or that sort of stuff. But both being, Visual Basic, and because we are using GUI Scripting, which is an external API, pretty much the exact copy and paste of the code in Excel would work in Access as well. The main difference is how you get the data and how you write the data into the Microsoft application, just because of the fact that the two applications are vastly different. Well, they are different. Well, you have databases in Access and you have sheets in Excel. So let's go through the start script method. In the top, I created two variables which are specific to Access, and I'm going to use them later on to create data. And one is a database object, and the other one is a record set object. So the database is going to be the main database, and the record set is going to be a single table in that database. And this DAO is the one where I needed the second reference that I showed you before in tools references. The others are the same, and here I place the code to set the system, so the SAP SID and the client value, which I will need to connect to. I mean, in Access, I take this information from the sorry, in Excel, I take this information from one of the cells. Well, we don't have a worksheet here, so I couldn't do it any other. Well, I could have done it in another way by putting an input field on the dialog, but anyway, I choose to hard code it. And next, I'm setting some of the variables. So the DB GUI equals to current DB, so that's the current database, the current access database, and the RS logs, RS stands for record set, equals DB GUI dot open record set and logs. So that's the table name, which is here. So this is how you basically reference the table that you have already created in Access. And I do this attached to the GUI session. I turn on error handling, and if you open my, or if you have watched my previous video on extracting data from the grid view, you will notice that these codes are exactly the same as in the previous example. So I literally just copy and pasted them. So we open, we connect to the GUI session, maximize the screen, call SM12, change some of the parameters on the selection screen, and we click enter. And with this line, we take we save the grid view, which is this view showing the logs, into a local object, so we can use that later on in the code instead of having this really long code in the in every single line. Next sets of comments are entirely optional, but in most cases you might want to just delete whatever entry you have on the table. So if it's not like a continuous update, but you always want to refresh the entire table, by doing these 3 lines of code, you can delete all lines from the table. So you need to set warning true and false, because when you want to delete records from Access, it's going to give you a confirmation screen, and it will give you the confirmation screen if you are doing it from Visual Basic as well. And this line gets rid of it, and then this line turns it off back again once you have done the actual delete, which is I do it by running a SQL command, which probably the easiest way. So with this do cmd dot run SQL, you can run any SQL statement in your database, and that delete start from logs is probably the easiest one to get to delete all the entries from the table. And next, we have this grid view control, and creating a loop using the variable I, which goes from 0 to grid view dot row count -1. Again, that is needed because the grid view is indexed from 0, and so you are, instead of going from 1 to count, you do 0 from count -1. And here we are actually creating the new entries in Access. So first of all, we are calling the record set, calling the method add new, which is going to create a new entry, and we use the next 4 lines to populate the 4 fields of the table. You remember the ID field is an auto number, so we don't Access will take care of it. And then finally we do an update, which actually saves this record into the database, and then we do it in a loop, so that executes this gets executed for every single line in the grid view. And if you remember from the Excel code, we had two loops, one to loop through each line, and the other one would loop through each column, but we are now need to extract specific columns, and the easiest way to reference to these columns are with the technical name. And actually this is how the grid view dot get cell value method expects the column name to be specified. So the row is always the loop variable, and the second one is the technical name of the column. And so the only difference I made here is for the second line, when we are getting the date and the time. Again, you might need to change this piece of code based on your local settings, but my date comes in a day.month.year, and Access doesn't understand dot as a date separator, but it expects slash. So I'm using this replace command to replace all dots with a slash. And funny enough, sometimes you're getting dates, sometimes you're getting times, but time as it is gets accepted. So we'll see it later on the code that these two entries, actually, I think it's already here. So these two entries got created, and then one is with the date, the other one is the time. Don't tell me why these fields are too narrow. Again, I've just created them with a wizard, and I was happy with the way it looks like that. So going back to the code, where is the code? Yeah, and yeah, so you do the table updates. So you do record set exclamation mark field name equals grid view get current cell I and then I comma and the technical name of the field, and then that's it. You loop through all the items in the grid view, and then finally I just do the update on these two labels on the dialog. One gets set with the number of records extracted, the other one gets set to the current timestamp, and at the end I just end the transaction. Simple as that. So let's see how it works. Actually, it's quite nice. It's now everything is happening in the background. So I just click this. You see that something got updated here, and I get one records updated and the current timestamp. If I do it again, and now we have two records because now, oh, this ended. But if I look at if I click on the other button, which opens up the report, you can see the two reports. It's probably exactly the same values what we have seen previously on the in SAP. Yeah, sometimes you see the second lock, but anyway. So I think that would be pretty much it. And one more thing, going back to the how do you get these names, the technical names of the fields? Well, probably the way I did it is I've created these lines, and I just put some some stuff in here, like username or just name or temp something, and again use the debugger to see what's coming through via these objects. So this is how I do most of my stuff. So again, you do the skeleton of the code, you put a breakpoint here somewhere where you have the grid view object already defined, and then you go back to your dialog, and then you execute, you wait for a second, and now we have stopped. So we are you take the grid view object, you right click, select add to the add watch, and if you remember from the previous video, we have this nice structure which is called the column order, which shows you all the column IDs or the technical names, and you pretty much just have to guess. I mean, obviously it comes in the same order as the columns on the screen. So you see client, GU name, GDSP time, and then G name and GArgs or GArg. And of course that assumes that everyone is using the standard layout and nobody has changed the layout to another default layout, because then the code wouldn't work or might not necessarily work. So now, because you are referencing the to the the username and the time and the table name with the technical names, if they are on the screen, no matter what order they are in, they would be the right values will be corrected by this piece of script. You just have to make sure that the whoever is running this has the layout which have all the fields that you want to extract. And yeah, you can let it go, and it will do the extract again. 2 records got extracted. So that would be my really simple example of how to do the same GUI scripting integration in Access. I have to admit that I've done this in a space of few hours, and it was mostly the time was mostly spent on Googling on how to do certain things in Access, like and I just go like access VBA, execute SQL, or access VBA reference to something, or access VBA create a new database record. And you always find some really good examples with some explanations that you can use. So it's once you get used to it, doing it in Excel, moving into, well, Access, or I might just say any other Microsoft application should be fairly easy. So as long as you have Visual Basic, and you can use the references to pull in any other API, just like the SAP GUI one, it should be mostly a copy and paste exercise. Most of the code changes will be needed because of the different environment you are working in. So anyway, I hope you find this useful. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.